Hi folks, Gamerbug here again, and we are continuing the series of professions What If for the Black Death. And this is basically a what if the professions were not what were in the game currently, but something that I envision. And I've done 3 videos before, this is video number 4, so let's get on with it. In the last video we covered how the monk could make short work of the night using the abilities at their disposal. And thus we need the counter to the monk and the class that the knight shines against as well, and so we move to the woodsman and hunter professions. Using this progression branch we'd be moving the hunter to a top tier class, currently it's not, the outlaw is, and then introducing the woodsman as the mid tier beyond the peasant. So let's talk about those first. So the woodsman is a profession that is more rural in nature. To be fair, it doesn't have to be. Their job is felling trees for wood, gathering it and preparing it. However, we're going to add into that the skills of a carpenter, but more on that later. So, standard skills for the woodsman. Well, tools he would access would be a couple of new ones. He would have access to the woodsman's axe, which is just basically a renamed version of the current iron wood axe. And he would have access to the wooden fishing rod, which is like the, I guess, mid-tier fishing rod. Beyond that, he doesn't really need anything new. Those make sense for the profession. Weapons. Well, they have quite a few, mainly based around what he does, or being predominantly wooden weapons, which is their forte. So we'd have a hand axe, which is just basically a simple single-handed hand axe. A two-handed axe, so just a bigger version of the hand axe. Nothing ornate, no double-headed axes or anything like that, just a big two-handed axe. Spears, and they'd have access to the flat bow. So the spear it'd be better than the current primitive spear, which we've removed from the beggar if you go back to my videos. And this one would have like a proper spearhead on it and stuff like that. And the flat bow would be the same as currently is in the peasant profession, but would be moved to this class, and it would actually work and be good. They would also be the profession that has the ability to craft the best shields. So they'd be able to make a sort of round shield, just sort of a smaller round shield, and a kite shield. Though they themselves wouldn't actually receive bonuses to shields in combat, but they would receive additional damage with axe weapons. So that's their kind of benefit in that way. Clothing and armour for woodsmen be pretty much what the current hunter has actually. A leather tunic, leather trousers, leather gloves and leather coif, and yeah, they'd be able to craft leather to be able to make these. New food options would be dried berries, maybe a nice broth or soup, some sort of berry alcohol. It's not important that we have these, but these are people that spend a lot of their time working in, chopping trees down and that, so sort of hearty meals make sense, I think. But they'd just give like hunger thirst benefits. It wouldn't be any like any of the things that the monks had if you've watched my monk video. And finally, they would be able to make iron ingots for their axes, and a new skill giving them the ability to make carpentry repair kits. So let's talk about carpentry. Well, this skill would basically work very similar to how the squire can make weapon repair kits and the knight can make armour repair kits for metal weapons and armour respectively. Well, these kits made through carpentry will be able to repair wooden weapons and items. So what constitutes wooden weapons? Well, bows, spears, shields and axes would all come under this. Sure, you can argue that an axe has a metal head and blah blah blah, but the head's actually less likely to break than the shaft, and it's my idea, so tough. They will be able to hand these to other characters, and they'd have the same limits as the other repair kits described in my other videos. And like those classes, they can use their own repair skill, this time at a workbench rather than an anvil, without needing a kit. And they'd obviously be better at repairing and using repair kits than other classes. So that's the woodsman. And he's basically the introduction to the next profession, which is the hunter. So let's start by reiterating that with all the other top tier professions, the hunter would again have all beggar, peasant and this time woodsman skills, and then learn a whole bunch of additional skills unique to them. The only new tool would be the bone wood axe. It would be identical probably to the normal wood axe, but have easier to attain, or at least for the hunter, resources. Weapons would be bone weapons. These are all the new ones they'd have. That would again be equal to the iron versions, or potentially better, which probably doesn't make sense. But you know, sometimes it's about looking cooler. Ultimately, we give the hunters a bonus to damage with bone weapons, giving a reason to pick them if they were statistically identical to the iron ones. Available weapons would be a bone spear, bone dagger, bone axe, and a two-handed bone axe. The bread and butter weapons of the hunter would of course be bows and crossbows, and thus they could make a longbow and a heavy and light crossbow, with a longbow being the sort of mid-ground in damage, but only just less than the heavy crossbow, but the rate of fire would be less for the crossbows over the bows. Along with the bows, they'd be able to craft the arrows from the peasant class, as well as bone arrows, which would be pretty much the same thing, but again it's using a different resource, so they might be able to get their hands on bone a lot easier than sticks, which sounds stupid, but you'd be amazed. Or you could say that maybe they do a little bit more damage. And they would also be able to make iron tipped arrows that do more damage than any other class can make. Finally, I'd like them to have access to barbed arrows that not only do more damage, but cause a bleed on the target with a damage over time effect. And then lastly, poison arrows, which they would need the poison from the herbalist class, but which when they hit the target do a damage over time that's quite strong, and someone would need a remedy to stop the damage over time. So basically that would be the arrows they can make, but though the arrows would require various resources, you'd be able to make them in batches of maybe 5 or maybe 10 instead of singular, which I actually think should be for the peasant class, and that would be unique to the hunter, that they can make like a batch of arrows. So in other words, they might need an iron ingot and I don't know, a piece of wood, maybe something else, and that would be able to make 5 arrows. So yeah, other classes I think should still be only able to make stick arrows in single numbers. So if you want good arrows, you're going to have to get them from a hunter. So it's these arrows and bolts and bows and crossbows that would make the hunter a formidable adversary to monks. Because as the monk is lightly armoured, and their range is, I don't know, I'd say it's probably a third of what the hunter can achieve with their ranged weapons. It means the hunter can devastate a monk at range before they can bring any of their skills to bear on them. However, that said, if that makes them the counter to the monk, that they can basically wipe them out from a distance before the monk gets a chance to do anything, well, it's going to be hard to figure out how we do this, but arrows are not really much of a match for plate armour. And they'd probably have reduced impact against fully armoured and shielded opponents, making them much weaker against the knight. And thus the rock, paper, scissors comparison comes full circle. Knight beats hunter, hunter beats monk, monk beats knight. It's not always that cut and dried, but that's the basic idea. So clothing and armour for the hunter, well, this would be padded leather, and those would be sort of the mid-ground between the gambesons, which we've not actually covered yet, more in the next video, and chainmail. To be fair, it would probably be more sort of a padded leather gambeson kind of idea. And they'd be able to craft like a tunic, trousers, gloves, and a hood, I think would be quite cool. And maybe they'd be able to make the bone or skull helmet that's currently in the game as well, or maybe something that doesn't look quite so rubbish. I'd also like them to have access to a quiver that they can make, and that would allow the storing of arrows or bolts. I know I keep saying arrows, but they'd need to make bolts for crossbows, and it would be different. You can't use one in the other. And using a quiver would reduce the weight of arrows somewhat to allow more to be carried, which would be another benefit unique to the hunter, well, or anyone who wears a quiver. And they'd be able to craft a quiver that can go on their back, or a quiver that can go on their side to suit the player's style. How exactly that works, I'm not sure yet, but you know, in my head, basically they can have, say, 20 arrows in a quiver, and it would weigh a percentage of what they should normally weigh for 20 arrows. Obviously the quiver would weigh something as well. Basically, just to give that benefit, their thing is arrows and range, so you know, for it to weigh 10 tons for them to have too many arrows might be a bit unfair. Horses, of course, is worth thinking about. Medical wise, well, I wouldn't mind them to have access to maybe some slightly stronger sort of swabs, but not bandage levels, but something a bit better than the basic swabs. So basically maybe a bandage that can heal 20 hit points rather than 10. You know, these guys probably have more hit points than a monk, but less hit points than a knight. So to give them a bit of a benefit, maybe give them something like that. It'd be nice, but it's not that important. That'd be it though. No other healing stuff that they can get that's better. Food wise for the hunter, well, they probably know a few additional recipes based on the food they catch and stuff, but salted meats I thought might be quite good, something that they can preserve and it would degrade a lot slower. And give them the bone meal that they've already got, that's fine. So unique skills to the hunter, well, they've got traps now, and I don't see any reason why they couldn't keep traps. They work fine. I would change it up a bit. Currently there's stone trap and wooden and iron. I would change that to wood, bone and iron traps and get rid of the stone one. I considered the idea of traps they could lay down for other players to walk into, but they'd be so situational. I'm not sure they'd actually work. But it's the thought, maybe. And then finally, what else do they get? Well, they get to complement the wood repair skill or carpentry skill that they've got from being a woodsman. They would get a leather repair skill, or tannery, or whatever you want to call it. And they would be allowed to create leather repair kits. So, as per the woodsman, they can use a repair kit in the field, or they can go to a tannery and just without a repair kit repair their leather stuff. They're the only class again that would be able to do that. So basically, if you think about the two classes in unison, they can repair any wooden item and any leather item, just like the knight can repair any metal weapons and items. So that would pretty much be it. Then I think throw in a bonus to damage with bows and crossbows and spears as well. Maybe the bone weapons, as I said. You could balance it out so you get the right sort of things there. Maybe give the hunters a slightly quicker run speed. You know, they're used to being out there running, chasing animals, that kind of stuff. And then put all that together, you've got the perfect mobile attacker, which means they're able to hold their own, but they provide a great deal of utility to other classes as well, hitting people from that distance. So that's the hunter, and it's a profession, if it was like I described, I think I'd choose to play. I always like more rural ranger type classes in the game, so that's probably why I do it. But what do you think? Too weak? Too strong? Dumb ideas? Let me know in the comments, and we'll close up this series in the next video, where we're going to talk about the profession that sort of fits outside of the rock, paper, scissors analogy, making them rather unique. Until then, thank you for watching. Hope to see you next time. And as always, Gamerbug out.